Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, welcome into the show. So, Brandon, this is going to be our last one. I figure we'll go ahead and let
for the year.
Right, for the year. That's true. Good point. I don't want to. Maybe some people were like,
I was going to say, don't get people too excited.
So
yeah, hey, don't get folks too excited about. Thank God. Let me get through the next 35, 40 minutes.
He didn't even sound that disappointed. This will be our last one. I just thought we would let everybody know this way.
That's awesome.
But no, so for the year, year two, which is amazing. I mean, we'll talk about that here shortly, but it's hard to believe that something we, started a couple years ago has lasted as long as it has. And I was looking back in some of the preparation for today's show at some of the guests from just this year. I mean, forget just the entirety of the show, but just this year, we've had so many amazing people stop by and talk with us. And we mention it all the time, just how, honored we are that they would take the time to do that. And we'll go through some of those things because I always like these shows at the end of the year where you can kind of just reflect back on what was happening. But I think before we get too far down that road, it is worth mentioning that, of course, today is just a crazy day. The sports world, of course, got the sad news with the passing of Mike Leach, the head football coach at Mississippi State. And man, I tell you what, I mean, it was something I sent a text message to my work team and was just telling them, guys, like, life is fragile. I mean, I know we continue to see these things all the time, it seems like. But when you get those times, like you were saying earlier, like, I mean, he was at the practice field yesterday, right? I mean, or day before.
Yeah. So like he's at the, they're getting ready for their bowl game against Illinois. It's coming up on January 2nd. Right. And, he's at the practice field and then goes home. And, from what I've read from all accounts, it looks like he had, a massive, cardiac event, whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because I had heard some rumors that he was probably going to step down at the end after the bowl game.
Oh, wow.
Because I think he had been battling some stuff, heart condition for a little while. And so like, I had heard kind of through the grapevine that they thought this would probably be his last game. And, it's interesting because, and I'm not quite sure why, cause I'm not a Mississippi State fan. But I was a Mike Leach fan and
that's a good way.
It was kind of a gut punch. Like there's those people that you hear about that they pass and you're like, oh, you really feel for the families and all of the loved ones and stuff like that. They're affected, but they don't really resonate. There's nothing that really lands, right? But for some reason, like hearing that he had passed really, really kind of hurt a little bit. And, certainly our thoughts and prayers, like you said, go out to the family and look, he's leaving behind, 100+ kids.
Yeah,
that's
true.
And we've had, Dr. Aaron on who is now in charge of their, sports psychology stuff. So he's going to have his hands full. I would imagine, cause that's tough.
Yeah. It's it's interesting. You mentioned something about the family, and I think it's one of those things that we sometimes overlook is we think of Mike Leach, of course, our exposure to him is as a football coach, and he's been around, I mean, Texas Tech and Mississippi State and all these great, quotes he has, press conferences. I mean, all of that you really got a sense of his personality. And I think that's like you. I feel the same way. It's like this one hits a little different. And I think it is because you feel he's one of those guys that you feel like, because just of his personality and the way that he, he's a guy that we would want to hang out with.
For
right?
sure. And he seemed genuine, right? Like there was never any coach speak. There was never, it was just always authentic because, they could have won by 30 or lost by, 50. And he may ask you if you believe in Bigfoot. You know what I mean? Like it's just, he's just stream of conscious guy. And it's just one of those things where he was super relatable. And what an amazing thing. I'd heard that he was an organ donor. And so part of, I think, the delay in kind of making the announcement was so that the doctors could do what they needed to do from an organ donation. Because from what I've heard is that, they had known that he was probably in real dire straits as soon as he got there. So.
Yeah, and then, I follow Dana Holgerson, of course, back from his days at West Virginia on social media, and I saw him, and I knew that he was actually one of the people I thought about right away because Dana comes from that Mike Leach coaching tree, and I saw him, comment, and it's funny, we talk about all the time about really that distinction between what these people football coach was what he did. It wasn't who he is. Like it's not his identity. And Dana was real quick in his social media posts today to mention what a great father he was, what a great husband he was, that type of thing. And sounded like somebody who just really could compartmentalize the football coaching aspect of it from going to, the beach and hanging out and being, there with his family, and friends. And that's such a cool thing. It's, I think a little bit of a unintended segue, I guess, into one of the topics we were going to talk about tonight, which is, and I think this is so appropriate because of, what happened and just that reminder how fragile life is just, we talk about this all the time on the show about being present and just staying in the moment. Like I say, I sent out a message to the work team today just about, when we're going through these holidays and we all get caught up in it, it's like a lot of hustling around and you've got lots of different parties, a lot of different activities and gatherings and stuff. And you're worried about, finding this gift or that gift. If you're a parent and kids are still young enough where, they don't want money like ours, just reach that point. But, and you do have a tendency, I think, to forget just to stay in the moment, just to be present around all of those people, because you don't get that time back. And quite frankly, I mean, and Coach Leach reminds us, or we are reminded of it because of these unfortunate circumstances that, it can happen any moment. Like, I mean, it really can happen any moment. And so really, I would encourage the listeners to make sure they're taking time during this holiday break just to unplug, right? I mean, like whether it's putting the phone down, whether it's doing whatever the case may be, but just really making sure you're staying present with all those around you.
100%. Very well said.
So speaking of presence, I wanted to share this with you. I've been waiting for the show, even though we talked earlier, I've been waiting for the show to tell you about this. So I saw this great, TED Talk. It was a little excerpt from a TED Talk that a guy, by the name of Will Gradara, shared, and he did this TED Talk on the secret ingredients of great hospitality. And I wanted to share this on the show because, we talk all the time about having standards for yourself and just really making sure that you're very intentional about the things you do, and really, no matter what it is that you're doing, have, great pride in it. And
All right.
He shared a story about being a waiter, and it was something that happened to him as a waiter that I actually right away shared it with a lot of my family members because I thought the lesson was so critical. But he talks about when he was a waiter in New York City, and there was a group of food critics that had been visiting the city, and they were sitting down at the table. He's a waiter in a really, really nice restaurant, and he's clearing the table of their appetizer plates, and he overhears one of the food critics talking about their trip. They were getting ready to leave the next day, and they were saying, what an amazing trip it was. They've been to all the best restaurants in the city, but the only thing that they had not got to try was a New York City hot dog. So Will says he, upon hearing that, he walks back calmly to the kitchen, puts the plates down, and just takes off out the door and runs down the street to this hot dog cart and gets them a New York City hot dog.
No kidding.
And he walks back to the table and he says to them, to make sure you don't go home with any culinary regrets, I present to you a New York City hot dog. And he says, as you can imagine, they just absolutely freak out. But that's such a cool story, and I loved it. But here was the thing I thought was really important, and I wanted to share with the listeners, is that he talks about, he said he relived that moment a bunch of times in his mind to figure out what happened so that could happen. Like, what were the series of events that played out so that could happen? He said, first and foremost, he had to be present. He had to make sure that, that he was dialed into what he was doing at the time. He said if he had not been present at the table, he would have never heard that throwaway line about the hot dog, number one. He said, secondly, it required him to, take what he was doing seriously, but not take himself too seriously. Mm-hmm. And then, like he said, kind of in wrapping up the story, he said, a hot dog in a 4-star restaurant's sacrilegious, but this was about an experience. And he really said that it's about how he made them feel.
Sure.
And then he said, what you're trying to give people is an experience. And I love this line so much when he talks about, giving people an experience or that moment. And we all can appreciate this being in, the business world or whatever, is one size fits one. Not one size fits all. It's one size fits one. Like if you're really intentional, if you're really purposeful and present in what you're doing, then you're going to be able to hear what somebody is looking for. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to be able to tailor whatever it is you're doing to them. And that gives them that experience. And I just thought it was such a really, really important lesson about not only, it's one thing to be present, but it's another thing to be present and actively listening, like actively participating.
For sure. And then be accommodating. Right. I mean, it's, there's so many things that are really great about that, story. One, the fact that, it's probably also don't judge a book by its cover. Right. Because you've got these food critics that are, have these outstanding palates and this, that, and the other, and they just want some street meat. And it's like, wait, what? Like, okay, and so like, it's it's both parties in that instance aren't taking themselves too seriously. Both there's some vulnerability there. Cause look, I mean, as a food critic, can you imagine? Oh my gosh, John Cullen, the revered John Cullen wants a hot dog from New York. So there's some vulnerability there. It's just when you really kind of try to break it down, it's a really, really good story.
He's taking a chance, right? Like, I mean,
sure he is.
He's taking a chance as a waiter to be
100%.
like, how presumptive, right? I mean, and like he said, though, his thought process is in that moment, it could have been the best bottle of champagne. It could have been a bucket of caviar, and none of that would have given them the effect of a New York City hot dog.
For sure. Moment. And that, because that's what they wanted and that's what they were craving. And I think, you take that and you kind of flip it to kind of what you were talking about earlier when you're present and when you're grateful, the things that you crave may not be the things that people jump out. So,
Right.
so the things, and you talk about us kind of getting a little older and what the kids want, the thing that I craved for Christmas when my kids were growing up is to watch them smile and have a good time, and the wonderment and the just morning of Christmas, just being like, oh, to now it's as everybody's matured and gotten older, Christmas has changed, right? Christmas is about spending that time with them and seeing them have a good time with their cousins or their siblings or whatever. So it's interesting how kind of the evolution of all that kind of happens.
You just made me think about this. You think about like when we're growing up, and there comes a time, and I'm sure everybody who's listening to this can appreciate this and has heard this as well, but there comes a time where your parents are like, oh, don't get me anything. Just your presence here is enough, right? Or just you being here,
Sure.
Just having all the kids here. Like when everybody gets older and moves away from home and then it's coming back or whatever. And you're right. I mean, when you get older and your kids are gone and they leave the house or whatever, that is the thing that gets you, like you finally realize, I think, why that's so important is that, that really is the thing that you long for. And it's so spot on that is that's the, being attentive to that, knowing that is going to make somebody's day, and you just never
Sure.
know what it is. I mean, you don't know, until I guess you experience some of that. But really and then I always think back when you just made me think about this as well, as to that. And we've talked about this on the show before, that story about like how many more times do you think you'll see
that's the thing,
your parents or whoever it is in your life,
and a lot of folks think like stoicism is this morbid outlook on life and all that, but it really does make you be present, because look, we're 12 days away from Christmas, and none of us are guaranteed that we're gonna see a Christmas. You know what I mean? Like it just, and if you can look at it as being, wow, that's awfully doom and gloom. No, that is a reality. And if you can make the most of whatever time you have right now, then you win there, so anyway, I just,
you're right. It is. That's a reality. Like people will look at that and they're like, oh, that's what kind of way that is not meant to. I heard a guy say the other day online, death is not something. Death is not something that happens to you. It's something that happens to like it's that inevitable thing. If we know
Sure.
It's that absolute thing,
sure,
then we're not afraid of it by saying, oh, it's a doom and gloom thing. It's that let's all identify and face this reality, and then let that be your kind of motivator or something that fuels you to take advantage of all the time you're living.
It's a compass, right? It's a thing that allows you to then make decisions that aren't putting stuff where you're just kicking the can down the road. It allows you to make decisions right then and there on what you can do right then and there. And it also, we talk about it a lot on the show. It really forces you to control the controllable.
Right.
Right. Because everything else is, I mean, you want me to get fired up and worry about something that is going to happen tomorrow if I don't have the guarantee that I'll be present for that? Like it just,
right.
I don't know. I not to kind of turn the damn show into,
people are like steering off of a cliff right now.
Yeah. I mean, where's Rachel Dratch when you need her to do Debbie Downer? But
maybe this is their last show.
Hey, for all you listeners, stay between the lines. We're not, but I think the bigger point is just to enjoy enjoy the time you have with the people that you love and the people that are around you. And really don't sweat the little things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's well said. It's funny. We were talking about how quickly, life happens and time happens. And I think about this because, if I asked you, when was Dr. Rob Bell, that episode we had with Dr. Rob Bell, Puke and Rally? I mean, you're probably thinking it's like back in the.
I was going to say in the summer, like in August.
It was
maybe?
like January. It was like
What?
January 7th of this year. Yeah. I was looking back at some of the shows.
Wow.
Just to prepare for kind of a look back episode. And I was like, Dr. Rob Bell was like, I mean, I think it's because we follow him on social media. And so you'll comment and we still engage with some of these folks. And so you don't think it was that long ago, but that was the first episode of 2022.
Holy cow.
Was his episode. So, and then China, we had back on, and just so many good ones earlier. I think back to, cause you had Mandy Patterson and Steve Springer and some of those folks. Ashley Merriman, I think, as I was thinking about this, was one of the episodes that really stood out. I mean, they all are great episodes, but I think about like just those kind of takeaways, that, her book, Top Dog, The Science of Winning and Losing. But one of the things I think really struck me about that episode was just we both are competitive people, both athletes, and, have competitive people in our families. But then I never really, I guess, got into the science of it, like to understand, like that's a genetic wiring, like that is something that is there. And we know because it's something that's there at an early age, right? I mean, with a lot of younger kindergartners even that were, studied and observed. So that was one that definitely stood out.
Well,
and I think that,
I was going to say, and then you dovetail that with Dr. Troutwine, right, on the TAP test.
Yes.
And you see where you kind of see where her research in the book really then shows you what Dr. Troutwine was talking about with his test. And you do start to see some commonality there. I mean, it's been look, and I hope the listeners understand, and this, because this is a true statement. I get more out of it from just being able to talk to these people than, I mean, it really is almost like having a master's class with the level of guests that we get, and let's be honest, that you get for us. It's amazing what the amount of information that we are providing to the listener. And I hope that they realize, like, there's some like gold out there that these people, and you may have to look for it because, like you said, one size fits one.
Yeah.
And you may have to look and you may have to listen again and all that. But gosh, there's stuff in every episode that is applicable to everybody.
Yeah. And I think you're spot on. It's like you're going to find something. It's kind of how that whole pen and paper, kind of phrase started, was if you're not writing these things down, I mean, you will probably find at least one thing that, if done correctly when you're listening, that one of our guests is going to say that you're going to be able to take with you and put into immediate action. Because I think about like Ashley Merriman, and one of the lines that stuck out to me was she talked about, the goal of competition really is to win, but the winning's not assured, right? But the one thing that is assured is your ability to assess, your ability to monitor progress and where you are. And like, that's really the beauty of competition. Like, of course, everybody who's competing wants to win, but at the end of the day, once you embrace that idea that competition gives you that, it's where I guess the phrase that winning and learning, you're not losing, you have an opportunity to learn. But no, that's a good one. And then, you think, we had Tyler Gillum on this year from the Savannah Bananas. And, it's funny. I was thinking about, I saw something with him recently on social media because they're, of course, doing the whole worldwide tour. And, I just remember him talking about what a unique player, like kind of how they look at, people who are just really going to be willing to embrace the challenge of being uncomfortable. Cause I mean, neither one of us, well, you probably would have had a better chance of doing this than me, but would have do the dancing and all that. I think
but I'd much rather
play.
I'd much rather just let me go try to get a hit. Yeah.
Now, is this going to be after with a game, right? Like, because I'm not trying to get up there and be dancing or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, and then we had Adrian Dinkle from Southeastern University on. This was all kind of in the summer. And one of the things, the title of that episode was Win Every Day. And as I was looking back at some of this stuff, I just remember sometimes the title gives away some of the big lessons from that episode. And his was truly all about like having a standard for everything that you do. I mean, and you think about those, like you mentioned, there's one thing from each of these episodes. That's one thing that resonated with me was just the importance of being very intentional, having a standard, having a goal for everything you do. And literally, that's how they built their program was win every day, win every route, win every drill, win every rep, every rep, all that stuff is really good.
Yeah. It's amazing stuff. I mean, it really has been a tremendous year.
Yeah. And then, speaking of baseball, I mean, this was, I know still one that sticks out to us, was Jack Leggett.
Sure.
I mean, if you had told me, back in January of 2022, hey, we're going to get Jack Leggett on the show, I would have been like, yeah, okay, right. But talking to him and getting an opportunity, speaking of master class, I mean, you're talking about one of the all-time greats to do it at the college level, and him really any level, but him talking about, that whole mindset of it doesn't matter. I mean, we've talked about response before, and we've talked about so what, now what, but that it doesn't matter, and how that just happened organically from, a conversation. I think he was talking about, it was like from maybe their sports information guy or somebody who, they're getting off the bus and it's cold at Boston College or somewhere and it's snowy or whatever. And he's like, bitching about the weather, and someone's like, it doesn't matter. And he's like, it just hits him. He's like, yeah, you're right. Like it doesn't, like it's inconsequential at the end of the day. Like the obstacle, and it doesn't mean when he was saying it doesn't matter, it's not to show indifference to the result.
Right.
Like, of course the result matters. It's all the obstacles and stuff don't matter, like that we face in our lives don't matter.
Exactly, because again, it is out of our control.
Yeah.
Right. You can't do anything about the weather. Can't do about anything about the guy up on the bump. If he's got good stuff that day, you can try to disrupt him. I mean, there's things you can try to do, but you can't control what that guy's going to do and how he's trying to attack you. So it doesn't matter. And nobody cares. Right. I mean, I know we talk about that. And here I go again with a Debbie Downer. They don't care. Hey, but if you strike out 5 times, nobody cares. Right. Yeah. I mean, so how are you going to adjust and learn? So.
No, I mean, look, sometimes it's the truth is the hardest message. A lot of times the truth is the hardest message, but I think it goes into a nice segue into one of our last guests that we had for the year was Graham Betchert, with Sacramento Kings mental performance coach. And I love the story, and I can't remember the player's name, and I probably should, but where he talks about, the evolution of palms down and just like being in control, because the player said that he was watching game film, and every time something bad would happen, he would lift his palms.
I think that was Aaron, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been. And that he just was like, basically like, what a bitch move. Like, why are you looking like all this is happening to you and you're the victim or whatever, And so, he just changed his mentality and was like, I'm going to be palms down. I'm not going to be like, what is happening, and more like, I'm going to be dictating what happens.
100%. Yep.
So, of course, like always, we see this common thread, this common theme throughout each one of the episodes. It all comes back to control. It all comes back to, having that plan, being disciplined. I mean, so much of what we talk about all the time is said different ways, but it all comes back to, like you were talking about earlier, being focused on those things you can control.
You got it.
So, well, guys, listen, as always, we certainly appreciate you all sticking in there with us this year. You said 12 days earlier. I'm looking at 11 days till your birthday.
You got that. You got that
big
right.
One. I feel 50. Like it's going to be nice that you have a 5 in front of your age now, since you give me so much grief on the show about my age. So now we're in the same 5 club.
We're at least in the same party
decade.
Yeah. So we're
in the same questionnaire where you say 50 and above.
We are definitely in the same little demographic that, people want to know. And it's getting to the point now where I feel like if I'm on an app or I'm in some place and it's asking me my age, God, that little thing just spins forever when I'm trying to get to 72.
Yeah.
It's like 8 swipes.
It feels very accusatory almost.
It feels
attacking.
It's like spinning the wheel on The Price is Right. I mean, it's like, hey, Bob, when's this thing gonna stop?
And the same reaction at the end when he's like, "Oh, you were almost."
Or hate to tell you, Brandon, you are over. Yeah.
We might as well end on that positive note of since the show has been so uplifting for everyone.
That's awesome. We love y'all. Thanks for listening. Check back in 2023. We got something for you.
We're gonna come back better than ever. But no, as always, I mean, look, if you're just tuning in to the show for the first time, maybe you're only catching the last couple of episodes. Maybe it was you've been a big fan of some of the guests that we've had on, and that's what drew you to the show because of, the episode was shared on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, YouTube, whatever the case may be. Now's your chance. Go back to listen to some of the other ones, and as always, if you have any questions or comments or just want to leave a good rating, mad ratings, of course, as always, don't leave those, save those for yourself, but 5 stars all around. But no, seriously, give us some feedback and let us know if there's a guest that you would like to see come on the show. We'll do our best to try and get them on here in 2023. So, well, brother, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
I will see you this weekend.
Yeah, you will.
In hot Atlanta. But thanks for another great year, and we'll be back in 2023.
Absolutely. Love you, my guy.
Love you. Take care.
All right.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.